In Gambia, the political crisis continues to deepen over the results of a recently held presidential election that declared opposition leader Adama Barrow as the victor. Now, several African Union leaders have arrived in Gambia to convince the country's president, Yahya Jammeh, to step down after his election defeat. According to the Liberian president, who is heading the delegation, a day of talks yielded constructive conversations, but no resolution. On Tuesday, the situation was further complicated after the ruling party filed a legal challenge to the results. Jammeh had initially conceded defeat, but backtracked a week later and refused to give up power, citing alleged irregularities in the election process. He's maintained his position despite a recount of the votes that ultimately assured Barrow's victory. Jammeh has led the tiny West African nation for 22 years. Let's speak to Douglas Digroot. He's with the Africa desk of the Executive Intelligence Review, and he joins us via Skype from Leesburg. Many thanks for joining us here on Press TV, Mr. Digroot. Now, what happened in that week between conceding defeat and then backtracking? What went through Jammeh's mind? Were there pressures from within his party?
Well, there most probably are. The history of presidents staying in power for extended periods in Africa basically is a result of the fact that there are no substantial private sectors in these countries. So there's a large group of people who benefit from jobs and so on if they're connected to the president. And if they lose that, they just can't go get a job in the private sector because it basically does not exist because of the lack of development that is the result of the IMF and the EU regimes prevailing in Africa. So therefore, there is a strong tendency in general for the extended networks around a president to keep him in power because it provides jobs for their networks. In this case, I can't say exactly, but I would start investigating that angle to try and figure out why he changed his mind.
Right now, we do know that the African Union leaders are trying to ensure that a smooth transition of power does take place. How much of influence do they have, though, over Jammeh?
Well, some emphasis is being put on the fact that the former president of Ghana, who was just defeated, is part of the delegation, and he has accepted his defeat. So there is some hope that that may have an impact, but it depends, how strong the pressure around the president is, around Jammeh is, for him to stay in power, and whether he'll go out or not. It's a very tiny country. It's a very impoverished country. A great number of the people who are fleeing, a large percentage of their population has fled. They're part of the boat people trying to get to Europe and so on. Many have come from Gambia. So it's very, very impoverished. And the Western powers, of course, are complaining about the not following the election procedure and democracy and so on, but they do nothing to try and develop these countries so that there are real economic alternatives there. So I would place the blame on them. How lucky how capable the acting presidents who are visiting will be, I really don't know.
And before I let you go, Mr. Digroot, what kind of a political crisis can we see ensuing if Jammeh decides to stay in power and not concede defeat?
Well, it could be a great crisis if there are external powers that arm the opposition, for example, like we've seen in Syria and so on, and Libya. We've seen these past operations. So if something could go that far. Now, you might say that the country, Gambia, is not that strategically significant, but it's in West Africa. West Africa is the most heavily populated area of Africa, the most heavily populated region, and therefore a very important region. And if this could be used to destabilize the region, some external powers may try to play it that way.
Okay,
That is by
let's
trying to
leave
keep
it
him
there
in
for now.
power.
Unfortunately, we have run out of time. That's Douglas Digrud with the Africa Desk of the Executive Intelligence Review, joining us via Skype from Leesburg. Mr. Digrud, we appreciate your comments here on Press TV.